Today's episode is sponsored by the Redwood City Zine Library. The Redwood City Zine Library is a community-based, traveling zine library located in the Bay Area. Check them out on Instagram at rwc.zinelibrary or buy some merch at ko-fi.com/rwczine-library. That's ko-fi.com/rwczine-library. And happy zine reading! Hello, and welcome to Everything Remade, a podcast that I hope is about growth as much as it is about music. I'm Edie Quinn, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to remind you about our Patreon page at patreon.com/humanmachine, where you can go to sign up to get music sneak peeks and read my debut graphic novel called Why I Hate the Festival, which is nearing 100 pages on the site already. That's patreon.com/humanmachine. And now, I'd like to play something for you. You're hearing Children of the Nations by ECHTHROS, which is the project of my pal Jesse Decay. The song comes from their new full-length, A Tooth for an Eye, which is available on Iron Lungs Records.
I feel like that happened to me really late. Like, I feel like that only happened to me like 5 or 7 years ago. And I'm 38. Cause like I can think about like when I got into music and stuff like that. But like, I feel like I kind of got away from music for like a short period of time. And then I realized that I just couldn't do it. So I had to come back to it. And that's when I realized, I'm like, oh, I think I'm a lifer. Like, I just have to do this. But yeah, that only happened when I was like, maybe like 30 or something like that. But I had been playing music for like 15 years prior to that.
Uh-huh. So you sort of were involved and you kind of like not necessarily fell out of love, but just like it hit a hold spot for you.
Yeah. There was the part where it kind of I used to be in this band called Rape Revenge, which was this power violence band. And when that fell apart, actually, I was also in this pop punk band at this similar time called Decay. And I was doing both of those bands at the same time for quite a while. And both of them fell apart at kind of like similar times. And I know that you've been in bands forever. I'm assuming that we can all relate to like it can be like a breakup. So like like a band is breaking up is like can be like an actual breakup. You know, like you're friends with these people. There's money involved. There's all these things, right? And so when those two bands broke up, kind of around the same time, I stopped being in bands for I'm not sure 3 or 4 years at least.
Yeah.
And I just had a hard time with it. I had to get away with it from it for a little while. And then once I got back into it, I started up a band called Solemn with a couple of pals, and I just realized I'm like, I just have to do this. I can't get away from it. It was I later on learned the term lifer, And I was like, I think I'm a lifer. I think I just have to make music. Like even that break when I was away from it, it just wasn't. Even though I felt like it was needed, it wasn't like a good or fun time for me. And it's just something that I feel like I need in my life.
Yeah. When your bands were sort of both breaking up like simultaneously, was there also an aspect to that where it was like you felt like you ran out of people that you wanted to play with? Because that was kind of what it was for me and sort of my like hiatus from making music.
Yeah, that was partly it. In the pop punk band was my friend Noel, who I had played in almost all of my previous bands with. Probably like 3 or 4 or 5 bands we had played in together, like from the time that we were teenagers. And when the band broke up, we also had like a friend falling out, and it was like, oh man, like who do I play music with now? And then also with Rape Revenge, like that band changed my life in a lot of ways. And after that, it was just like, what am I gonna do after that band? After being such like a profound band. So I think I just ran out of people, and I just didn't know what to do next.
Yeah.
I think.
I'll tell you what, when you said that you were in that band, I immediately was like, I do not know how many times I watched that like laundromat set. That like 6 minutes from the laundromat. I was like, I do not know how many times I've watched that. Like, and it's funny because I found it like today because I was like, oh, I gotta watch that again before we chat. And I was like, this only has like 300 views. Like, how many of them are me? You know?
That's super. I recently told someone about it. I think just like a coworker or something, and I rewatched it recently. I hadn't watched it in years probably. And at first I thought, oh, someone only taped part of the set because it's only like 5 or 6 minutes. And then I watched it, I'm like, oh no, that's beginning to end. That's like introduction, feedback coming on, whole set. Everyone have a good night. Like 6 minutes.
Yeah.
But I originally, when I opened the video, I was like, oh, this is only a portion of it. No, that was the whole thing. That was like 11 songs.
Yeah.
Or however many songs.
Yeah, you would get that impression when you see the timestamp. You would expect at least, even for like a grime band, you know, you'd expect like a 10 to 12 minutes. And it's just like, there's the part in the beginning, you know, where the vocalist is like sort of doing the like, hey, everybody, thanks for being here kind of thing. And then, like you said, the feedback comes on. And then, like, at the end, the vocalist is sort of like, we got one more song. And you're like, no, that was the whole deal. Yeah. Yeah. And,
I think there was multiple out-of-town bands at that show. And we were putting it on. I think there was, like, at least 2 other out-of-town bands. So I think we just... And later, that laundromat became an actual venue for a time. But at that time, it was a guerrilla show. We weren't supposed to be there, so we just wanted to play super fast. I think so. I think our sets were usually a bit longer, at least maybe 12, 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that one I think we played extra short because there were some out of town bands, and we just wanted to get out of the way so that they had time before the cops showed up.
Yeah, that's the impression that I got. Was just like, it's like, we're not supposed to be here. Let's get this done before somebody else realizes we're not supposed to be here, kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you can see it in the video, but I do remember there being at least 1 or 2 people like actually doing laundry in there, and we're pretty stunned by the whole thing, for sure.
I mean, that's, even if it's annoying though, that's like the most, like, that's the most like eventful night of laundry doing, even if you're like borderline annoyed, because you're not into like screamo, power violence, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's still the most eventful, like, 20 minutes or whatever you spent doing laundry, for sure. Just like, what the hell happened? Like, all these weird looking kids came in and started banging on drums and guitars and screaming at each other. And yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's a
That's
good
awesome.
story for Monday when you go to
Yeah,
work. It's
for
like, how was
sure.
your weekend? Oh, I don't know. I was doing laundry and it was wild.
That's awesome though. Yeah, I've never I've never done the laundromat, but there was one instance in Redding, California, where we played in this park, and we played like I, I want to say it was like a gazebo, but there was no like. It was like there was supposed to be a gazebo, but instead it was just like the flat, like
Like a piece of
concrete.
concrete.
Yeah, and there were like power outlets there, and we played with this band called Rat Boys, who are like I think they're like kind of bigger on the like indie, rock kind of thing now, and basically the person who put on the show was like, okay, so here's the deal, we're not supposed to be here, but we do this all the time. Like, the thing is, like, you saw when we came in here that there's only one way into this place, and it's like really like it's like a snake, just like it's a really winding way in. And so we will see if there are police on the way, we will see them all the way down there, and you'll still have like 10 minutes to play. So the thing is, like, if you see the police coming, we'll tell you two more songs, and then you'll act like you're just packing up and we're leaving. And
Yeah.
then we'll wait until the police leave, and then the next band will go on and we'll do the same thing again. And it was really cool, but it was like, yeah, I mean, it was like such a weird experience. And no police came that night, which was cool. But
That's really wild. I think we might have played at the same spot. We played Redding, California, and if I'm not getting it mixed up, we did play like on this concrete slab
it was
down
just like a park.
kind of. It was in a park like by a river and a bridge,
Uh-huh.
I think.
Uh-huh.
And I don't remember the part about the really long road and all that stuff, but I'm pretty sure, we might have played at the same place. This was, I don't know, 10 years ago at least. When
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
went down to California.
it was 9 years ago for me. It was like 2015, I think.
Hell yeah,
Yeah, and it
that's
was,
awesome.
yeah, it was real. I was playing drums and doing vocals at the time, and it was it was way colder than I expected it to be in California. Like, even though it was like November, it was just way colder than I expected. And I'm playing drums and I'm doing vocals, and I have like a full coat on,
Oh
and I'm doing all this. And it wasn't until like, song like 6 or 7 that I took the coat on and just went down to a hoodie, but it was
no,
like, yeah, I don't know. It was a cool experience,
yeah. I love those guerrilla shows. Me and my pals put on noise shows here in Calgary, and sometimes we can't get a venue or whatever, and we'll do outdoor shows once or twice a summer, and they're always lots of fun.
Yeah, do you is it like Transformer, or you just find some place where you can plug a couple things in, or
For it's called Public Assembly System. The crew of us that do it, and when with those shows, our buddy Connor has found this really great kind of, I guess, resource. He found this guy that rents out DC generators. So it's just essentially a giant battery that puts out with an inverter or whatever it's called, and it puts out 120 volts. And I think you could run a rave on that thing all night, because we'll play for a couple hours and it goes down like one little tick,
yeah,
and there's still 8 or 9 ticks left. And so it's quiet. Like, it's not a gas generator where it's making its own noise and stuff like that. It just sits there like this block, and that's how we run this massive PA off of it. And we found a couple of good spots to do it. But yeah, it's this cool DC generator that we use that we found. I think this guy builds them himself in his garage and rents them out.
damn, yeah, that's what I meant, generator, and I said Transformer, like it's like, yeah, that totally. Transformer getting this huge like idea of this, like you're practically next to a power grid, but yeah, and I don't, yeah, I've always like I almost played a generator show in like 1995 or something with Propagandi in this like
Sick.
cave in Las Vegas, which was like famous at that time, like these cave shows or whatever. But
That
I
sounds
think,
amazing.
yeah, I was like, I was asking beforehand, I'm like, how do you have this like gas generator going like anywhere near this PA or whatever, and it's not just like getting up in the mics and making all. And they were talking about like they've been doing this for so long. They had like a hole dug in the ground that they put
Oh,
the
really?
generator in, and then put like
Like some plywood over
yeah,
it?
some wood, and they're like, yeah, it's all good. But unfortunately, this was one of these instances where like, someone in the band couldn't make it on the tour, and so last minute you had to get somebody to sub, but they can't go the whole tour. And it
Right.
was like we had to stop in Texas. We didn't get to do, and it sucks because I never did get to play with like Propagandi, but I did play with
I
FYP
love that
once
band.
when Chris from Propagandi was doing drums for FYP. So I did get to meet Chris and hang out with Chris, and that was very cool.
Sick.
But yeah, that generator show, that would have been legendary. But yeah,
We
I
used
think.
to, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I think it's really cool how much more of that you're seeing these days too, which is awesome.
We used to play this fest called Fastcore Fest that was out in Squamish, BC when we were in Rape Revenge. And I remember, and when they'd have a generator and they just put it really far into the woods so it wasn't so loud. But I remember everyone's tubes and their amps, like I think the generator there's something wrong with it. Like it was dirty power or something.
Yeah.
And everyone's tubes and their amps were glowing blue, which I've never seen before
Oh
or
damn.
since. Because usually they glow orange, but everyone's tubes were glowing blue, and everyone thought their amps were going to blow up. And then, this one bass player, his amp did blow up. All of a sudden, just smoke was coming out of it.
Oh,
And then, like,
gosh.
I think mid-song, someone else grabbed another bass head and threw it on top and stuff like that. But and they were like pulsing. It was like pulsing blue. It was pretty freaky, but it was kind of cool.
That is freaky.
I'm not sure if generators are good for tube amps in general.
Yeah. In Star Wars or whatever, if they go from like a red or an orange to blue, then that's good. But in this instance, I think it's not. Sounds like it's pretty bad, actually.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
yeah, that's wild. Yeah, I don't. I don't know anything about any of that, and I'm like I was sort of saying before we even set up the time to do this conversation. I was sort of like, look, I'm gonna feel kind of silly during this chat because I do not know gear stuff whatsoever, especially in regards to like making noise and industrial type sounds. But like I just generally am bad at gear information, like period, right? So like I'm one of those like how how like what's the impedance on this, and I'm like, oh well and I gotta like go and look, and still I'm not sure if I'm reading like the right thing kind of thing. So it's always good when I'm in a project where somebody else is like knows exactly, like in Coma Regalia, like one of our bass players, Nate, it like works at this music wholesaler or distributor. I'm not, it's like Sweetwater, but it's a different thing, called Zounds. And Nate is very much like they know exactly like what's cool to plug into what, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've always sort of have to have that like tangentially aware like gear person around me, because I'm just like I'll plug whatever into whatever and just see what happens, and it's not always good, right?
I can be really bad at it too, which is funny because I'm an electrician. I should know all those things. We learned all about it in school, but for sound, it can be a bit different. I just usually I Google it before, like when people are like, "Oh, does this amp work with this one?" I'm like, I don't know, and I just Google it. It
Yeah.
just takes the guesswork out of it.
You're like, I gotta use the bathroom real quick. And then you can go
Yeah.
and, yeah, that looks like that's cool. Yeah, and you're drying your hands off, and you're like, yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, or like I in my cab, I put my own speakers in it and stuff like that. So I bring it, and then another guy will be like, "Oh, can I use your cab?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, What's the impedance or whatever? What are the ohms?" And I'm like, "I don't know," like because I loaded it myself,
Yeah.
and I actually I just keep my meter, my electrical meter in my bag, and I'll just check it with that, and it's just the easiest way, because sometimes the nameplates are scratched off of stuff or fallen off, and you just never know. So it's just I just bring my meter and you just check it right there. I guess
This
that's the only like thing that I am good at with my job is I bring my electrical meter to shows.
this is like ultimate. Like this is no guesswork whatsoever. This is like, we're gonna know for sure once I
I
whip
have
this thing out. Yeah.
I have a bad memory. I have a really bad memory. So remembering like, yeah, the way that impedance works, like with, okay, you have to have the head has to be less than the cab or whatever. It's like, I never, there's not enough space in my head for that kind of stuff. I don't know about you, but I feel like I learned something and that bumps something else out. So if I bring that, yeah, there's no guesswork, and it's like, there we go. Now we know.
Yeah. And there's kind of with me, it's just it's a, I feel like there's conflicting
Pieces of
aspects
information.
to, yeah, like I, I, I want to know everything about like what I would consider like these like mystical natures of like music and like how it works and et cetera, et cetera. And so when it comes to the hard, facts, the real world applications of these same things, like it's it's like in conflict with sort of like my fairy tale version of like you just pick this piece of wood up and you create these things that like came out of nowhere. Isn't that just like the wildest thing you've ever heard of, right? And so it bats up against the fact that like there's a very real science to like the plug going in and the way the strings vibrate and the way that the pickups carry that and the way it goes.
Hmm.
But both, to me, both things are true, right? Because it's like you can turn the guitar on until you start doing something to it, then nothing's gonna happen. So there is that bit of magic no matter what, like, you know. Um, but
Well,
yeah, I don't,
that's a great saying, though. I feel like so many things in my life as I get as I every day get older, just like both things are true. I feel like that simultaneously so many times. So few things are either or.
yeah,
But to speak to you say these kind of magical things that aren't set in stone. I remember going to a guitar shop and asking a guy, I think specifically about this impedance question about a cab I was trying to buy, and he answered with like the most like fantastical question or answer. He was like, "Well, the impedance changes depending on what you're playing. If it's like a high frequency or a low frequency." And I was just like, "You're killing me, dude. I can't." That's the most like, as in Canada, it's Long McQuaid, but it's just like instead of Guitar Center, but it's like that's just the most Guitar fucking Center answer ever. It's just like, oh, it depends on what you're playing. It's like, no, man, it can't depend on what I'm playing. There's a number on the freaking thing when you buy it.
yeah. I need a real answer.
I need a real answer. I need to not blow up my amp. It
Yeah.
doesn't like it
Yeah.
shouldn't matter what riff I'm playing. It's like, oh, a certain riff will blow up my amp, I guess.
I've actually never heard any thing like that, but I wonder if that is the implication where it's like you'll, I have a guitar head that I bought from my friend Derek, who was he was using it in this band Marakate for he was using it for years and years, and so it's a guitar head. I don't think he knew it was a guitar head. I don't think he knew what it was at all, because like I bought it from him in like 1999 or something, and this is like, obviously the internet is a very established thing by that time, but like gear information isn't always like, isn't what it is today, right? So I bought this, it's a lab series, and I bought that and one of those PV 4x12s that are like, they're almost as big as like an Ampeg 8x10. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's a guitar head and that's a guitar cabinet. And he was playing bass through these, I think just kind of not knowing what they were. Like, I think maybe he did know that it was a guitar cabinet, but I think I remember him saying he thought it was a keyboard head. And now, even at the time, I remember looking it up. I remember looking it up for like years and not being able to find a lot of information. But then, say 5 or 6 years ago, I looked it up, and it's like lab series. These were basically made for BB King, like, and so this head that I have is like, this is like a BB King like sort of custom,
an old blues guitar head,
and it's a fucking incredible guitar head. But it's like, what that person that was saying that to you at that guitar shop makes me wonder, is that what they meant? Like, you can get away with a lot depending on all of these different circumstances, because how else did he not blow this head in this like emo violence screamo band 5 years, like playing like loud distorted bass through these things,
Yeah, I feel like so many things, they're intended maybe to work in a way, but I don't see why you can't use them for other things. I remember playing with here's another old power violence band, Vile Intent, years and years ago, and he played through a guitar amp, like guitar head, guitar cab, with his bass amp, like all the time. That was his rig, and he, as far as I know, he never blew it up. And yeah, like I like to play through. I have an Ampeg, a bass cab, and then this old Garnet PA speaker cabinet that I play, because I still like to play through amps just in case the PA isn't loud. I like to make it nice and loud, even though I'm playing noise. Yeah, I've never blown either of them so far, but you hear about it. I've heard people setting PAs on fire or blowing out speakers or whatever, doing harsh noise or really low frequencies and stuff like that. But I've never seen it happen. I don't know. Have you ever seen a PA like blow up?
No, no, like not that specifically, but I've referenced before, if there are people that listen to lots of episodes, I've referenced before there was a battle set that we did with Ostraka in Philly, where these power strips were coming through a hole in the wall. And we definitely like set one of those on fire. Like one of those like started smoking, and like and some amps stopped working, and all of this stuff, and it's sort of it was sort of, to me, in my own mind, when this was happening, it was kind of like, well, what did you fucking think was going to happen if you tried to do a battle set with Ostraka? Like, you don't do that. Like, you don't do it. But yeah, never like the whole thing. I have been recording and an amp, just like I was really like in the middle of this song, and there's this part where it's like a really solid 30, 45 seconds of like feedback, and I was like giving it to the guitar, right? I'm like really, and the amp just like in the middle and just stops, and I was like, oh, and I that was like a this carving that I had, and then I had to go and try. Like I was like, that was going so well. That feedback was like so good, and I was like, can I try like with another amp? Can I try with like EQ and just trying to match the tones? Can I try to weave in to where I don't have to kill like everything that I did before? It would not. It obviously would not work. That I don't. You would need some next level like, engineering skills to have made that work, and mine were definitely not that. But it was one of the more heartbreaking moments like during recording, just like because
that sucks.
Yeah, I don't know if you get that way when you're recording sometimes, where it's like I will really get in the same headspace as if I'm playing a show. Like I'll feel all the things that I'm feeling when I'm playing for people, like while I'm recording. And
that's interesting.
I aim for that because I want when I listen to an album back, I want there to be a moment or multiple moments where I can recall my being present, like while I was doing that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes these instances are accidental. Like sometimes it's like, oh, and this is this part where like when I was like, I was playing and I sort of jerked the guitar in this way and I almost fell over, and you can hear the neck of the guitar hit the side of the cabinet in this recording. And I'm like, should I redo it? And I'm like, no way, that's gotta stay, because I was there.
You're in it.
Yeah, I was like there. I'll always remember exactly what was happening right then, and I don't know, I feel like it's a connection for me to the songs, other than just the time I spent writing the songs and all of the emotions and everything that went into creating the songs, the lyrics and the performances. And it's another thing for me to anchor like my time on this earth and creating that music to that music. And so like, yeah, it really did feel heartbreaking because I was like really 100% there. I was like, this is the best it can be while you're recording these songs like completely by yourself,
Yeah.
But
that's really
okay.
Beautiful. That's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
I feel like, oh man, I feel in some ways like I'm the opposite, and it sucks to say after you just described that so eloquently. I get very anxious. I can be very stressed out when I'm recording. I feel like it's this thing. It's like this combination of things where it's like, because at least when I've gone into the studio, when I'm recording on my own, it's totally different because it's chill. It's fun. Mm-hmm. But like in the studio, you're dealing with like a time constraint, mm-hmm. With money, because it costs money to be in there, and you just want it to be as perfect as it can possibly be, because this is the recording. This is what most people are going to hear if they're not going to see you live or whatever. So I've always found it always like somewhat. I find it stressful. I've talked to other friends in bands and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, I love recording," and I'm like, I always have a bit of a hard time, because it's just like, okay, let's go, let's do this as quick as possible and as good as possible. But with ECHTHROS, I the last couple of things I've done, I've recorded just on my own. just before we started talking here, we were talking about computers for a second. I was saying that I just recently got a laptop. I've got my whole adult life without owning a laptop. And my pal Anju from the Nausea and she's in so many bands. She used to play in Anna, and she's in Ceremonial Bloodbath. She's kind of my mentor. She's like, you need to get a laptop. You need to like learn how to do this stuff on your own. Because I go to studios and I pay people, and she's like, just learn how to do it on your own. Get Reaper, watch on YouTube, get tutorials, figure it out. So I got a laptop and I did all that stuff, and yeah, it's definitely more. It's interesting doing it on my own versus being in the studio. There's pros and cons, of course, to all of it. One is I don't really know what I'm doing. Of course, that's a bit of a con. But the pro is it's a lot more relaxing, and I could get a lot more into the feel of it, rather than it's like, hey, this is my one day at the studio to get this thing done and to get this thing as perfect as I possibly can. So it's a lot more. It's a lot more chill, I've found, and pretty enjoyable.
Yeah, and you can allow yourself to expand on ideas, that come to you in the moment, as opposed to just like, no, we're not here to improvise. We're doing what we came here to do, kind of thing. And yeah, I'm recording this conversation on Reaper right now, but it's on a computer that was made in 2007.
Amazing. And you've kept it going this whole time.
I mean, I swear every 6 months I get a scare, and I have all my stuff backed up, and I get a scare, and I'm like, what am I going to do? This is like, this is not, it's not my livelihood as in like financially necessarily, but like it's my being able to record my own music and being able to have these conversations with people and release them into the world. Like, this is such an outlet for me. Like, I do lots of other things. I make comics and stuff like that. But like, if I didn't have some way to just come down here and just when a stray like idea for a song came into my mind and just like start going on it, I don't know. I would, my phone would be full of even more voice memos, I guess. Just, but I wouldn't know what to do with them after that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm terrible at file management. Because I'm so. I'm definitely a Luddite. Like I only recently owned a computer for the first time. So about halfway through writing my album, I think I thought I lost it, just like lost it off my computer, and I had to talk to a friend, and they found it, and it was all good. But yeah, there was a scary moment there of being like, okay, I've been working on this for, I don't know, maybe weeks or a couple months at that point, and I just thought it was gone. But yeah, it's like, oh, it's right here. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't even know that file existed, or I didn't know how Reaper files worked, or
there's so much that's like I have literally never tried to save something in that location. Like, why did it just randomly?
Why did it go there?
Yeah. I'm always saving like in this one folder on the desktop, like every single time. Why is this in like temporary this, that, whatever thing? And I don't know. This is like, even though I've been using this program for nearly 15 years, this is like particularly embarrassing for me to admit. But there's even like a way where apparently like you can use, like, Reaper can track down like it's like if you hit record and you recorded something and then you saved it afterwards, like when it says like save these files, like not necessarily you saved the folder that you're working on, but you just saved the file you just recorded.
Like that one stem?
Yeah, that one stem. Supposedly if you if you even if you delete that later, like supposedly you can find it
Yeah.
in your computer. And I'm sure it's just a couple Google like answers away from like me being able to figure that out. But like I have there's been times where I was like, I wish I knew how to do that. Oh well, record it again, um, but yeah, like these programs, they are amazing, they are particular, but yeah, I don't know, like Reaper, especially just for how like little resources it takes up on like your on your system, how little RAM or whatever, like
Hmm.
it's wild. It's like there's no way I'd be using this computer from 2007 to
To run
do
Pro Tools or
yeah,
something.
Pro Tools or Cubase or Ableton, or something like that.
Hmm.
There's no way. It'd be like there'd be like two inputs playing and it would be like just turn itself off. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Um
did that in real time in front of my buddy Brad, who mixed and mastered my last two things, and I was asking him to give me some lessons on Reaper, and then we ended up just playing with this ring modulator that I had, and we were kind of jamming with it, and then I did it. I did exactly. I deleted something right in front of him, and then for whatever reason, I couldn't undo it or something. I went to undo, and it just didn't work. I'm like, ah, shit. I'm like, that thing that we just recorded. And he just immediately did what you're saying. And I didn't know that either. And
yeah.
this was just like a couple of weeks ago. And he just immediately found like he's like, it's right here. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I've already forgotten how to do that. So if
Yeah.
I do it again, I will have to look on YouTube. But I do. Yeah, I now know that it is possible because I deleted it for some reason. It wouldn't let me undo the delete. And then he's like, yeah, don't worry. It's right here. So
it's right here.
it's a cool program, especially considering it's like close to free, like compared to Pro Tools anyway.
There's an ongoing joke between the drummer of my band and myself, where like every time we start a recording project, like he'll be like, Reaper is not free. And it's because like when I open Reaper on my computer, the first thing it says is Reaper is not free, and it's like you have used Reaper for 30,000 hours and blah blah blah. Like it's like I said, I've been doing this for 15 years. It's like a lot of hours, and it's like Reaper is not free. You have been using Reaper for 36 times, and it's like still not sure. And you just click that button, and you're like, I'm still not sure. I don't know what you're gonna have to do to convince me, but we're still getting there.
That's really funny.
But yeah, I mean, so with ECHTHROS, like you're you spoke of sort of like you had this downtime from playing music, and like before that you were like primarily a guitar player, right? And so
Yeah.
what was when you came back to like okay, I'm gonna do music again. Was that your sort of when you dove into like making noise and discovering noise and how like you were gonna approach that?
Yeah, I when I started music again, I started playing in this band called Solong, and I was playing guitar in there, and I was doing guitar and vocals, and I'd never done that before, and I would get really tired, uh, like after a song, so I just be really winded from doing vocals and playing guitar at the same time. I'd done both of those separately at different points in different bands.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my buddy Connor, who I put on the shows with now, he was the drummer of that band, and he really got me into noise. He plays as DFH. He's been doing it for like over a decade, and so he really got me into noise. So I started collecting a couple of these noise devices and kind of learned how to put them with like AVY boxes like into the signal path of my guitar. So just in between songs, we would just do like kind of noise interludes just to give me like a, like a 20-30 second break to take a breath and have some water and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that band started to break up, we had recording time booked for it. And then my band members came to me and they were just like, we can't do it anymore. They just had some stuff going on in their lives. And I was like, oh man, like, but we have like recording time booked. And I was like, okay, like, if you can't do it, you can't do it. But I'd been collecting all these noise devices, and I got pretty obsessed with it. I started to collect more and more, and just really liked having all these different sounds at my feet and stuff like that. And we recorded them to the albums and stuff like that. And then, so when the band broke up, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go into the studio and I'm going to play with these noise devices. I'm going to yell and I'm going to see kind of where it goes. I'm going to record my own thing. And that's kind of how that started. And I didn't have a jam space at that time. I just had these ideas like in my head and just recorded them kind of live off the floor at this cool studio that we had recorded that band with, maybe a year before or something like that. And that's kind of how it started. And then it was right before, I think we recorded it a week before the COVID-19 shutdown happened. It was like March of like 2020. And then the next week everything like got shut down. So I couldn't play any shows or anything for the next couple of years. So I just kind of kept making music and kept recording and stuff like that. And then when it started to open up, I started to play more shows and get out there and stuff like that.
Yeah. When you say you're recording, was that for this same project?
Yeah.
Okay. Was that a previous record?
Yeah. Like where I went into the studio when my band broke up, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first that I did a split with a band called Everything You Ever Loved. That was just like one song. We just did one song each. And then did a self-titled EP that came out on a label called Odd Void. So those are the first two things that I recorded in the studio there over the weekend. And
is Everything You Ever Loved one of the people from False Body?
The guitar player from Everything You Ever Loved used to play bass in False Body.
Oh, okay.
He recently gave up. I think he's just focusing on Everything You Ever Loved now, and there's a new bass player for False Body.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I thought, there was a connection of some sort there.
Yeah, there is, and they're Edmonton bands, and they're all connected. They're all in each other's bands.
It's like that.
But yeah, Everything You Ever Loved just came out with a new album, and it's really great. Yeah, I love those dudes. Solong had planned. My band that I was in, we had planned to do a split with Everything You Ever Loved, and then we broke up, and I was like, hey, do you guys still want to do a split? I'm gonna do this noise thing, and they're like, yeah, sure, and which was very cool of them because it's a very different thing. So that was the first thing they came out with, and then self-titled EP after that, and then
That's awesome. You only had just sent me the link to the Iron Lungs site, so I thought that this was like sort of a debut of yours. But
Oh yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
this is sort of something you've been refining up to this point, and with the release of A Tooth for an Eye,
Yeah.
you was it was that part of like your musical journey was making this album like was the concept of this album, which you've described as an indigenous sci-fi horror fantasy death industrial concept album, was
Yeah.
was this present back then, but were sort of like, I need to get to that point?
Not really. I think it was like I just did what I kind of knew how to do at that point. And it was just, I guess it was just a bit simpler, and then it just kind of got a bit more elaborate as I went, like and again, like getting a laptop and learning more recording techniques, and just I wasn't sure if when I had the idea for A Tooth for an Eye, which is the album that just came out, I'm a big fan of sci-fi and fantasy, and I love indigenous storytelling, and it just kind of came to me like, this is what I remember. I was up at work, and it came, and I called my partner, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do next, and I wanted it to be like a bit more death industrial, a little bit more what is the term that I'm trying? A little bit more like atmospheric and stuff, because I wanted it to be scary. I wanted it to kind of sound scary, because it's like it was going to be my first full length. Each one of the songs is a different like chapter and perspective in this story that I put together, and so I wanted it to just be a bit more elaborate, a bit more involved, a bit moodier and stuff like that. I wanted there to be a bit more percussion like in it and stuff like that. So it was just, I think the idea of it is what led me to the sounds of it.
Oh, okay.
If that makes sense.
Sure. And this probably just paints a big picture on like my inexperience with a lot of noise stuff, but I was taken by sort of the underlying, like, there's a lot of melody that I found, like particularly in some of the vocals, like they're haunting, but there's a weight and there's a melody that's there that doesn't counteract like what the music is doing, but it doesn't not either. And I found that really interesting, and I was wondering if that idea speaks to what you mean when you say that you were looking for it's not the word you used, but like diversity in the overall like landscape of the songs that you were trying to create.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that you say that. I think what I tried to do was I use a lot of vocal effects and stuff like that when I do this project, and I wanted to do, every single song has like a very different vocal effect, and I wanted to just do something like slightly different in every song to kind of give it that sense of like, oh, this is a different chapter, this is a different perspective, even though it's me and my voice, and even though I can change it a bit and do slightly different things, it's always going to sound like me. So I kind of wanted to like have the sound of it a bit different on each song to give it like, oh, this is a different part. This is the next unfolding of this story. So yeah, like I I have done different vocal effects in different songs previously, but this one I very specifically like each song was a very different effect, and I tried new things that I never tried before, tried different pedals. I think I got some pretty cool sounds on some of them, some that I just like never tried before, and I was like, hey, that's cool, just kind of experimenting and stuff like that. So yeah, no, that's interesting that you say that. I was really trying to kind of do a different thing with each song there and get my voice kind of sounding a bit different on each track.
Yeah. Do you think that, like, were you thinking like, sort of like, okay, this is a concept album and therefore I'm creating this in a sort of linear way, but I want these very clear, like, sort of signposts? And was that what you were sort of intending with that? Like,
totally.
yeah.
That
makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah, I mean, like I said, my drummer, like, he's like really into Harsh Noise Wall and all of this stuff, and he actually has like a tape label that he does, all that stuff on, and it's I don't like I don't. He does these like wild like Harsh Noise Wall albums that will be like 6 cassettes for one album, and he'll only release like 5 copies of it, and like there's this whole like I think he's like probably more popular for that like than he is for our band, but yeah, it was almost like when we first started chatting, it was like I should really just have Jason host this episode, but but I'm glad I didn't, because we've had a good time chatting, I think. But yeah, like I did the sort of elevator pitch that you had given me for the concept of the album, but can you elaborate a little more about the themes that you were trying to express and like what you wanted to ultimately get across with this album, from a storytelling standpoint?
For sure. Yeah, okay, so how do I talk about this? Something that, if you're at all aware of Indigenous issues in Canada and America today, you might hear the phrase like land back thrown around, which is essentially like a movement where Indigenous people are trying to like very literally just get their land back. So all of the land that is in Turtle Island, Canada and America, was stolen from Indigenous people, and we've been moved out to reservations or reserves, and been oppressed through a great variety of means over the last 400 plus years. So there's like the reality of the situation, which is quite sad and quite dire, and just difficult to see on a daily basis as a Native person, seeing what's happening to the land and to our people. And sometimes it's just hard to know what to hope for, what to look at, what to do, how can we actually get our land back and stuff like that. Like especially like, and it's very, I think, poignant today, like with the election that just happened. It's like, man, like that's a guy that does not give zero fucks about Indigenous people or our rights or our sovereignty. Right. So, it kind of came to me is like, okay, I'm going to write this story. It's a fantasy story. It's a bit of a horror story. It's a revenge story about us getting our land back. And so the tale is like a bunch of Indigenous youth. I don't really get into the explanation in the story of it, but they get essentially, incredible and terrible and violent powers, and that they get imbued with the spirit world in their living forms, and they are able to take back vengeance upon upon colonizers and settler culture and drive out violently the people that have taken our land from us. And maybe that'll upset some people hearing that, but it's like, I will remind you that that is what has happened to us, and that this is a fantasy story, and I don't really believe that this is something that will ever come true. But it's like, this is my way of like how can we envision an indigenous future where we are sovereign and where we are thriving and where we are healthy and stuff like that, because we are constantly being oppressed by our governments and by extractive resource companies and racism and just widespread ignorance and stuff like that. So this is my story about how we could get sovereignty in our time. So each song is a different aspect of it. So the first song is called From Out of the Darkness, and it's just like I'm just playing up these different, like, this, in each song I had this imagery in my head of like the first song talks about northern lights bursting suddenly into the sky, like all over the country, and this terrible wind and these sounds, and then all of a sudden you see all of these kids and animals like coming out of the darkness, and it's just like, and it's just supposed to imbue this fear of like, okay, what if we took this back? What if all of this turned back around? And what if the violence was perpetrated in the opposite direction? And that's kind of the whole vibe of the album. And again, if that makes any of the listeners uncomfortable, it's like, maybe look at the history of what has happened to us, and maybe you'll understand why some of us might, want our land back. And since it isn't being freely given, how can we do that? So yeah, that's what A Tooth for an Eye is about. And I think it's I think it's a pretty good story. I know that you yourself are a big fan of like sci-fi and fantasy and horror and stuff like that with your comic book writing and everything. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that's what the album is about.
Yeah, I think that, I think that sonically and thematically it's an incredibly powerful album, and I'm glad that you got
Thank
to
you.
realize it in the way that you did. And that's still available from Iron Lungs Records, right?
Yeah, okay. They still have copies.
Mm-hmm.
My album releases are coming up in the next couple of weeks here in
when are those?
In Calgary. So in Edmonton, it's going to be on November 19th at the Aviary. And then November 22nd, it's going to be in Calgary at Loophole Cafe, with my pal The Nausea is coming from Vancouver, and Met Glass is opening. So yeah, those are going to be the release shows, and yeah, it's still available from Iron Lung, and yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else that we should chat about before we take off? Like, I usually I try to hold them around an hour. Sometimes they go over. It doesn't matter. But like, I just think that was a good spot to end it. If like it's sometimes like I don't want to start talking about something goofy after you just had this like really powerful message about what your album's about. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. No, I just like to say thank you to you, Edie, for having me on. I feel very honored and grateful that you put this together, and I think that you do just really great work. And so I'm grateful to be a part of it. And yeah, and just thank you to anybody who's checked out the album. I really appreciate it. And yeah, if you did get a physical copy, please read the lyrics and just kind of check out what the actual story is about and stuff like that. Yeah, just thanks for listening.
And that was my conversation with Jesse Decay. Thank you so much, Jesse, for taking the time to chat with me. Thanks to all of y'all for listening wherever you are as well. If you got a second, rate and review us wherever you're listening, and that'll help more people discover the show. Until next time, take care and do good things.